I'm Clint Culberson with LordsOfConsciousness.com, and I am coming to you from Contact in the Desert 2017 from Joshua Tree, California. And we've had an incredible weekend talking to so many incredible people. And of course, none other than today we are joined by Brad Olsen. How are you, Brad?
Doing great, Clint. Nice to see you guys again. What a great event it's been all weekend.
It has been an amazing event, and you got to do two presentations. One of them, over more of like a general overview of the fake world which we live in, and you kind of went over like the 10 big, myths that
Deceptions in the world today. Yeah.
Yep. And then you also did a workshop on the giants, the potential and most likely existence that there's been other types of bipedal species on this planet, and a lot of them are much bigger than modern day humans,
and with bigger skulls like the Paracas Peru skulls or the Star Child skull. But I also brought up the Flores man, which was just announced last month that it had no relationship to Homo sapiens, that it was a branch off of Homo habilis, and that's where it ended. And those were alive concurrently with Homo sapiens. So my point is, here's a species, although diminutive, but now being finally admitted, living alongside Homo sapiens. So just extend that out to all the evidence I'm going to present about the giants and the elongated skulls that have been found. The official title of the workshop was called The Forbidden Archaeology of Giants in Our Ancient History. And it went over well. I've done this 3 times now, 2 other conferences before now, and feel like I've gotten it honed to a pretty tight workshop. And I hope they ask me back next year.
Well, I think no doubt you will, man, because you're presenting incredible information that is, again, showing us that the history that we've known, that we've been taught, is again not so much what is being found out in the field, you know what I mean? Especially when we're talking about archaeological history. And I guess my question then to you would be, why keep this from us? Why choose specifically even about the fact that there could have been giants? Were they our masters? Were they our slaves? Were they a combination? I mean, why would they want to keep that history from us?
When the first giants started getting pulled out of the mound sites in North America in the 19th century, you got to understand this is a much different place, very religious, very Christian, and such a thing must have been a shock to anyone's model of reality, whether religious or a burgeoning evolutionist trying to make sense of how these entities could even be there. And as is often the case, and we see this in the UFO community, people who want to debunk just throw the baby out with the bathwater. Just get rid of the evidence. It's all fake. We don't want to see any of it. It's been known that the Smithsonian, in many of the cases here in North America where giants and their related artifacts were found, coast to coast, not just in the Midwest, but out here in California, as well as on the East Coast, and especially along the Mississippi River Valley and Ohio River Valley, Smithsonian would come in, much like the FBI, flipping their badge and say, "We'll take it over here." And whatever college professor was on the beat, sort of like a local cop investigator, he was just outranked. Smithsonian would come in. They thought they were doing the right thing by turning over all the artifacts and skeletons, and indeed, they'd take them away and nobody'd ever hear from them again. So it's called Smithsonian Gate, and it's been going on for over 100 years.
Yeah, like many, this seems to be a reoccurring theme with most established institutions, whether they be government-owned or nonprofit, whatever it be, anything that's getting huge funding by some sort of powerful elites, there's always some sort of cover-up going on. And part of that, this whole weekend is about, our famous topic of disclosure. And I guess for you, compared to last year, you were here last year, this is where we met you. And how would you say over the last year disclosure has evolved, unfolded? How much have you ever seen so much disclosure take place in a 12-month period?
Well, there's definitely these little micro disclosures that happen at nearly a weekly basis. As I mentioned, the Flores man announcement, while not particularly tied to the UFO, it is tied to our human origins, which I think when the big picture emerges, we're going to see that this planet has been populated by a lot of different species, many of which are extinct, okay, but we can't discount the fact that other sentient beings have been here. As far as big disclosures of the year, that's a good question. And I was at Jimmy's Fader Knot party last night, and we were doing some radio interviews in one of the rooms, and Jimmy comes crashing in on another guy was interviewing me, and you can't keep a microphone away from Jimmy Church, I'll tell you that. And he starts telling his stories, and I go, hey, wait a minute. I'm taking control of this interview. And I said, I'm the interviewer interviewing the interviewee. Yeah. And so he, that was the question I asked him in the last year. What do you think has advanced UFOlogy the most? He said there was some guy that talked about being taken to Jupiter and meeting some ETs. Somehow that made a very strong impression on him. Now, I've always been somewhat suspicious of stories. In my book, Modern Esoteric, in the introduction, I have a section to be aware of stories. And a good case in point is what's going on in Syria. You've not been there. I've not been there. Richie hasn't been there. All we can do is rely on the story that's being told to us. So in the case of Jimmy's Jupiter guy, it's okay, maybe that happened, but maybe he's making it up. There's no real verification. Otherwise, no other data points. And so Chuck, who is the coast to coast of Hong Kong, he was the next up, and I did the interviewer getting interviewed and asked him the same question. He said there was a guy who came on and talked about a case in the UK that was very famous. But again, that was a few years ago. That wasn't within the year. So neither one of them really gave me a good answer. But I would say, if we are to believe what's coming out of Antarctica, and once again, these are stories, but I am partial to hearing out David Wilcock and Corey Good, and I do think they know some people. And I would have to say in the last year, some of the things that have been reportedly happening down there are the biggest news in ufology.
Yeah, and these are stories that are entering the mainstream. I mean, David Wilcock in his presentation was showing, stuff that was on the Drudge Report. I mean, the Drudge Report is is seen by the mainstream audience. The masses in a sense. And this is already starting to leak out. Specifically when we're talking about Antarctica, but I think, part of disclosure is above and beyond even, extraterrestrial. It's a part of what has been going on right here in all the organizations that many of us are a part of, or that we at least have passports to, or baptisms in this religion or whatnot. And it's over the last year alone, we've seen many events that are going along with the stories that guys like David Icke have been telling us about. And now they're being proven so right, because you can kind of see these allegiances, especially through the leaks that we're getting. I mean, WikiLeaks has been paramount in this, unfolding this disclosure. And this year has been some of the best leaks we've ever had in terms of really showing what's really going on.
Well, I would have to agree and say that's probably my number two. While the WikiLeaks stuff had to do with around the election cycle, the Podesta emails and the Pizzagate stuff, I think equally as profound, if not more so, was the Vault 7 information that came out. Basically all the techniques the CIA and the Alphabet Agency used to spy on us, many of which we've been suspicious of and they have denied, but now are confirmed. So these Alphabet agencies, in my mind, are losing all sense of credibility. They have been caught time and time and time again lying to the public and then just trying to have to patch it up. Well, where does our belief in their ability to protect us go? Out the window. Their way of just blowing it off, in my mind, it's not acceptable. You can't lie time and again and expect to get away with it without losing a fair degree of your credibility. So at this point, now we know that even devices, when they're turned off, can still spy on you. Your computer, your TV, your smartphone. These are all spying devices. And just like the meme of George Orwell who said, I didn't write 1984 as a bloody instruction manual. I wrote it as a warning to humanity. And unfortunately, so many things in 1984 are coming true right before our very eyes. And the Vault 7 releases certainly confirm much of that.
Absolutely, and it's almost stranger than fiction. You know what I mean? That with everything that we're living in, how it's unfolding in the way it is. Like you said, it's become some sort of instruction manual. You know, the book 1984, and for any of those who don't believe it, you can see it, especially when you see how there is no government. There's nobody in the FBI that's outwardly looking into these leaks. You know, all they do is just say whatever, and then that's it. We're just, mainstream media doesn't cover it, and then we're just supposed to move on to the next topic. You know, but it does seem behind closed doors there is some movement going on. There are people that are wanting this to be brought into the light, or at least for the guilty to be held accountable. And where do we trust, and what's going on? In many ways, we almost have to sit back and watch. I mean, we're only really getting the tip of the iceberg. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, absolutely. And you look at an event like Contact in the Desert here, 5,000-6,000 people. We're all here. We're learning about UFOs, ETs, contact, megalithic structures. I mean, it goes beyond just the UFO realm. I spoke about everything is fake, all the deceptions in the world today, the giants, the untold history. If we were to believe everything the government tells us, or NASA tells us about UFOs and ETs, that would mean all 6,000 of us are completely bonkers insane. Or else, the logical conclusion is, they're not telling us the truth, and we are the ones who are creating this new narrative based on the evidence and what people are coming forth and saying this is their experience. These experiencers are coming out more and more and more, and now I think they're finally feeling empowered enough to speak their truth, not feel afraid, and even if they did have a horrible abduction experience, to talk about it. And I think that's cathartic in a way for them to get it off their chests. And more of these experiencers are coming up to me. And my book, Future Esoteric, is the one with everything on ETs and UFOs. It's the book that got me invited here. And I talk about hybrids and all this stuff. And it's from these experiencers' point of views that we can really get deeper into the whole abduction phenomenon and start to really try to discern what exactly they have had to go through and why. And to me, that's one of the intangibles about coming to this event that I value so highly is it's 6,000 people of a like mind. So there's nobody that's going to get into an argument over whether chemtrails are real or not here, or whether UFOs are real or not. We all know that this stuff is going on. And so it's good for the tribe to come together like this and to share information and make new contacts and see old friends.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Now, how, yes, this is a group of like-minded souls, I would say, but there are definitely those, specifically even amongst speakers or the authors that we're here to see and the people that are presenting, there are differing opinions. And within any community, it's healthy to have differing viewpoints. But then there is always that potentiality for something super divisive to break a movement in half, and then you wonder, where's that even coming from? Is that just is that truth being, or is that falsities being exposed, or is this some sort of planned thing to try to break people apart? And I guess my question then to you is how does a movement like this, a movement of disclosure, maintain a healthy dialogue for things that are all not fully proven, to have those counter arguments, but still keeping the big vision in force, as opposed to something that's so divisive that we could break it in half.
There's no doubt in my mind that one of the oldest military tricks in the book, called divide and conquer, is happening here in the UFO community, because if they can get us divided on whether or not one of the speakers here at this event is telling truthful information, or whether or not he had experience with some of these entities that most people had never heard of, or in the case of doing other things in disclosure that would have us come apart, such as the flat earth that we were talking about. If there is a way to get us arguing amongst each other, that's the perfect technique for dividing us. And I also have no doubt that there are people here from the letter agencies who are watching us. I saw a lot of strange people taking my picture and stuff. But as a kind of a public figure, this is part of the way it goes, and I have to basically put myself out there for that. Not that I have anything to hide or am doing anything illegal, but it's a kind of creepy feeling to think that we're being watched and monitored, but I have no doubt that they would be here and they're watching to see what kind of information we're presenting, if any of their disinformation programs are working, and who's parroting that disinformation. And I would also put it out there that there may have been some benevolent ETs here too. There were reports of the two women that were 6'2". I saw them walk by twice. Somebody was saying they were tall whites, and that they have come to this event before and have probably been here at this event this year, and they report back to their superiors, and they too, just like the alphabet agencies, are looking at how humans are digesting all this. What is the new information this year? What are people glomming onto and feeling like this is the latest trend towards disclosure? And I maintain, as I spoke on my panel on Friday, that we're living in the age of pre-disclosure. And we talked about this last year when we were on the stage. This is a very important time, because when disclosure happens, it's going to be a sea change of everything is going to change in our world, to the point where future generations are going to look back on this time and say, well, what happened before disclosure? Who were the people that were advancing this agenda? Surely there was enough information out there that they could start discerning this, even though there was so much deception in the world. And so I maintain, in this era of pre-disclosure, what we are doing is even more important than what we can do in the times after disclosure.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I agree. And, I think part of that, even with pre-disclosure, is to remember to keep our eyes on the prize. What are we really after here? Isn't disclosure an attempt to make the world a better place and to eventually reign in heaven on earth? Because we know it's a possibility. I mean, we know that we can actually live in a pretty amazing state, given the abundance of this planet, and we've talked so much about this, especially in Future Esoteric, how you spend a significant amount of time on the future in terms of what's the prize here? What are we after? I mean, are we going to just fight endless battles to the end of time? I mean, I sometimes feel like once disclosure happens, some people might get super depressed because I don't got an enemy to fight anymore. It's like, remember, the whole point of this is that we can eventually laugh more, spend more time with our family, have healthier relationships, with the planet, and other species around us, and even those who are not of this planet, and that's what that seems like the prize is. And you speak so eloquently to that, and it's like something that we really need to make sure we keep our focus on.
Yeah, and make peace with the planet, as you say, and bring this unhealthy garden planet back to its full bloom. Just think what we could do if free energy technology was released. We could put up desalinization plants around the world and literally turn deserts into blooming gardens again. The technology is there. What we're fighting for is the disclosure of releasing this information, not just pertaining to UFOs and ETs. And while that is the most important part of it, because everything kind of falls out after that, we can also take little bits and pieces, like the free energy technology. We can discuss new models of civilization. I propose in my book, Future Esoteric, an end of money. And this is what's so amazing with this event, because I can say something like, we would like to see the end of money, a free gift economy, sort of on the way, Burning Man. And nobody's going to really roll their eyes to you here. People are open-minded enough at this conference to consider the possibilities of a new world. And that's really what it's going to take. It starts with all of us and our free will and seeing with new eyes. When you wear rose-colored glasses, you see the rose-colored world. You change your way of looking at things, and you can see it in such a way that you'll find things that were right there, hidden in plain sight, that you may have missed before. And when people do that and make that conscious effort to really pay attention a little bit more to the details, this new model, this new era of perception really starts to unfold. And it really is up to all of us to take that on personally. It's an interpersonal journey, but I think when enough of us start to get it, for one, there's no turning back. For example, 9/11. Once you know that that's a false flag and there's no way the official narrative could have made any sense and the media continues to lie about it, A, you know the mass media is total fake media. That's the real fake media. And B, you can never go back and believe that narrative. So it's like opening Pandora's box. Once you open it, you can't put it back in. And that's what's going to happen with us. And we could have this 100th monkey effect where when enough of us do wake up, it lights up the consciousness in the human race. And then a lot of things can happen for the better.
You know, and you brought up this idea of the importance of the inner journey, and that's been one of the big emphasis that I've seen at this conference. Even though we talk so much about that which is outside of us, that the governments or even the ETs or even ancient civilizations, again, exterior to us. There's been such an emphasis nonetheless on, even with all this information out there, it always starts within. You know, like at the end of the day, none of this matters unless you're doing equal amount of work on the inside. You know, that as above, so below, inner, outer balance that is so needed. And I mean, how do you find that balance within yourself, focusing so much on these things that are exterior to us, but yet still remembering that it's to come back in?
When I traveled around the world in my late 20s, I basically was an atheist my whole life, and I had a very spiritual experience at no place else but on top of the Great Pyramid. In March 1993, I had a very spiritual moment, very interpersonal, and I realized at that moment, not only is there a great world beyond that is quite inexplicable in today's religious models of trying to make sense and understand this, but that it is absolutely an individual journey. It's as unique as each one of our fingerprints or our irises, which are different in each person. And that journey is going to be different in each person. Some can take it faster than others. Some may take lifetimes to glom onto some of these concepts. But in the end, I feel it's all an inner journey. The servant is the master. Being in service to others is the way to go. And you never go wrong if you put out as much love as you can possibly give to everything and everyone around you.
Brad, tell us about the book that you're working on now, which will be the third part of your Esoteric series. And, you know, when can we expect to see it? Because we have some fans that love your work. So when do you give us a projected timetable?
I have said previously late 2018. That could now go into 2019. It's just because I have a 5-book deal with Leo Lion-Zagami. We've got one more of his to publish, and his is next up on the agenda. But then I have Beyond Esoteric. It's about 3/4 written. I need to go in and polish it up. But I realize that right now we're dealing with this great transformation, that it's all happening right now. We may even see something in this year 2017 along the lines of disclosure that could just blow the lid off of everything. And if that's the case, I certainly want to document it and put it in Beyond Esoteric, and the subtitle is The Ultimate Journey. I never repeat my subjects. I always look for new content, and some of the material I used at my talks, especially on the giants, will be in a section called Embargo, which is the truth embargo on our human origins are fake, and we haven't been told the truth on that. So a lot of the subjects that you hear here today, which in many ways I consider Contact in the Desert like the vanguard. This is where many of the theories which then start to take hold in the general population germinate right here at Contact in the Desert. So it's good for us as researchers to keep our finger on the pulse and see what's going on. So to answer your question with Beyond Esoteric, it's more than I'm waiting to see, because according to Leo Lion-Zagami in his second volume at Confessions of an Illuminati, 2020 is the year that the New World Order has to have their apparatus set up and going. And they're behind in many ways and have been completely delayed. And I'm sure there's a lot going on behind the scenes nobody knows about except some of the most seasoned researchers and whistleblowers. And while that date is only 3 years away, so many things are happening practically on a weekly basis to digest. So when Beyond Esoteric is getting close to completion, I just want to make sure that I'm getting the latest and greatest intel, and the data points is the way I collect. And when those data points all converge around the same message, I would say that's pretty close to the truth.
We're living in a time of acceleration, and it's now that researchers, even like yourself, don't have to wait years to be vindicated. It's almost as if, shoot, you might only have to wait a couple months to be vindicated at this point. So it's patience is quite the virtue in this time. And now, if anything, this is actually the time where you won't even need as much patience, because it is unfolding, like you said, on a weekly basis. Something else is happening, and it's a glorious time to live, my friend. Thank you, as always, for joining me, man. Please check out Brad Olsen on some of his books, his Esoteric series, some of his even some of your older books, which travel books that talk about a lot of ancient sites here in North America. And check us out again at lordsofconsciousness.com, and subscribe on YouTube, and check out our website. We got great blogs there and great videos on YouTube. So thank you much.
Thank you for having me, guys. Appreciate it. Always a pleasure to see you again.